Hi, I'm Red. You're watching Gravy Built. Today, I'm installing one of my PTU kits, power transfer upgrade. Comes with a custom thickness shim, 2 springs. One is a pressure relief spring, one is for the 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive servo. And I'm going to be installing that in this Diff today. You know, I get a lot of questions about my kit. Some people don't understand how it works or why we use it, or even comparing it to a viscous coupler, which it is not. So today I figure I'll make a new video, address any of those questions that I think need to be addressing. And you know, I've done quite a few of these already, so you know, to be streamlined a little bit. So we're gonna get into this thing and get it handled. Okay, so let's get this off, starting with a 34mm, which is kind of funny, but I got this pretty cheap on Amazon. So you gotta pull this socket off the front. This is what holds the flange. And then right in here we have a little, like a conical washer to hold all this stuff down. If I can get this off. Okay, we have a little conical washer. And then in here, I'll have to show you guys right now. Let me get this off real quick. Yeah, it's almost off. There's a little plastic retainer, and then under that there's a O-ring to keep fluid from leaking past the splines. There we go. Yeah, so you can see this O-ring right here, and it's held on by this little plastic right there, and then the washer on top, and then the nut. Super easy. So we got that off, got a little seal right here. And then other than that 34, all you need is an 8mm. Just take the case bolts off right there. Hopefully this thing doesn't puke everywhere. I tried draining it the best I could, but we're gonna find out right now. Put a little drain plug under my plastic folding table. Some people might think it's funny, but you know, I don't have a big shop. I just do my own thing at my house, and more money goes into my pocket that way. So, all these bolts right here, get these off. And we got a little tab right here, you can pry. Oh, there we go, it's leaking, like I said. And then right here. Try to keep this all together, and there we go. Okay, so I got the nose off pretty easy. I'm going to go in and explain a little bit about this setup the way I understand it. So they call these a dual pump system. So there's actually 2 pumps in here. One is essentially connected to the rear, one is connected to the front. So when these pumps spin at a different speed, it sends hydraulic pressure to push against this clutch pack, and that's what engages power going to the rear. So it does take a little bit of time for it to engage. It's not instant. Honda went to this setup over a viscous coupler for fuel economy, for freeway cruising, so that this can actually disconnect power going to the rear on the freeway, so you don't have all that parasitic loss driving 4 wheels instead of 2. So it gets you better fuel economy. This rear end is from a 2007 to 2011 CRV. Not Element. Element does not have this secondary ramp assembly inside, which I'll explain in a second. So this is the year that I recommend running. My kit is only really meant to work with the 07 to 11, and they also started using this setup in 2005 and 2006 on the CRV only. So, along with the dual pump setup that sends hydraulic pressure, this system has what's called a ramp assembly, I guess you might want to call it. So on the back of the clutch, you have, well, you got a bearing, and then there you go. You have what's called, I mean, it's a ramp with a couple ball bearings. So what happens is when you get slippage, before the pump can actually build pressure, under quick movement, these expand and it applies pressure directly to the clutch pack, giving you quicker response out of your rear. So that's why I like to use it. And also too, you know, a lot of these older ones are real clapped out and just worn out. So what my kit does, along with the pressure relief spring inside here and the 2-wheel drive servo, I have this shim right here. And this shim goes behind a spring, and if you can see right there, you have an extra little piece that engages with this ramp, and it applies pressure because this has to slip, otherwise it would bind. So the shim that I include replaces the one in there with a thicker one, so it applies more pressure to the ramp, giving it firmer engagement. And then you take that other shim that's in there and you move it on top of the actual clutch to take out free play. So we're gonna show that in a second. So let's get this thing torn apart and install these springs. Okay, so let's start with the pump assembly. Always make sure you put these pieces back, otherwise these pumps won't turn and you won't get any engagement. I mean, you might get a little bit, but yeah, it ain't gonna work. Okay, let's take those off. And then, like I said, there you go. So these are the 2 pieces that engage the pump. One is on the rear pump, one is on the front pump. You can actually hear it pumping. So let's put this out of the way. This is kind of nasty. Ugh. Yeah, I put a little thing under there, but yeah, we're gonna put this out of the way so we can. Oh, Nelson, can you grab me another paper towel, please? Okay. So you gotta be very careful when you take this apart. There's lots of little like springs and balls and different stuff, and when you put it back together, you just got to make sure that these pumps spin freely. So let's start with this. I'm also going to drill a hole so we can get some more pressure going to the diaphragm. Ooh, let's see. Those are just centering pieces. And this is the back pump, and then this is the pressure relief spring right here. We're going to replace it with this, but I'm not going to put that in yet. And then here's the 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive servo, which gets replaced with this one. So we're going to put those in, but not quite yet. So I need to take this thing apart. I'm going to put this back on. And we need to take the back piece off right here. If it wants to come. There we go. Can't remember which way. It's been a while. There we go. Yeah. So you can see these balls of those springs. They just have to go back in the reverse direction. And then we have the pressure reliefs, or temp relief that pushes against the spring. And then right here, the fluid, it goes in through this hole and then it comes back out through the filter. So we're going to take this hole and we're going to widen it out and put it all back together. Okay, so yeah, still getting little metal shavings out of here. Got to make sure you get it nice and clean. You don't want any of this junk clogging it up or getting into places you don't want. Made that hole bigger. There's a couple O-rings in here, and this piece is what actually pushes on the clutch. So now that I got that done and I got it cleaned, so now we just have to take all these little pieces and put them back where they belong. So let's start with these little ones. They go right here. So yeah, just be very cognizant what you're doing, because like I said, if you don't do it right, it's just, you know, you're gonna have a bunch of problems. Oops. So So that's where those go. Take the pump. It's all sticky and slippery and nasty. Yeah, we're gonna center this once this goes on. Oops. Losing stuff over here, dude. There you go. And then, oh, going into that that little drain bucket that we put under there. So now we're gonna take this and we're gonna put it back on here. Okay, there we go. That's on. Now remember we pulled this one off first. Okay. Yeah, that one goes right there. So now we can install the new springs. Pressure relief goes right there on top of the ball bearing. And then the servo goes back in here. This servo helps keep the car in four-wheel drive longer. These are just little, I'll put that back in a second. So, got to be careful. This spring is much stiffer than the other one. So when you put this back, you have to be very careful. And then, yeah, there we go. Make sure these pumps spin. Then you got to be very careful. You got to put these bolts back in and don't over tighten them and strip the pump, because that would not be a good thing. Let me get these down. Yeah, do not over tighten them. Actually, give me that little ratchet over there, Nelson. No, the ratchet, not the electric. I'm doing this one by hand. And then I gotta get the 8mm. This thing is a little boo-boo. Go. Make sure that these spin. And you're just gonna have to use your best judgment. I don't know how much to torque these to. Honda doesn't have a recommendation because they also don't recommend rebuilding these. So just gonna have to use your best judgment. Not too tight. They're pretty small bolts. Okay. That one still spins. Ooh, this one is a little tight. There we go. It spins. You can hear it farting. It's already pushing pressure into that diaphragm. Okay, so we're gonna put this little centerpiece. I'm just gonna put it in the housing right there. Okay, so now the pump is done. Like I said, okay, gotta make sure that you put these pieces back, because this one engages with the rear pump. Let me kind of center that a little bit. This one is the more difficult one. There we go. I can hear it pumping. And then just put these little bad boys back in. Ooh, took the pocket. And then, before I forget, I'll put those back on right there. And then don't forget the needle bearing. You don't want this thing binding up on you. You can hear that pump. You can hear that pump. So that is ready to go. Now we got to work on the clutch. Okay, so now we're going to put the shim in, move the other one down. I use the press. It makes it a little bit easier. You can do it by hand. It's just more difficult. So the press is just nice because it holds it. Got some little pieces right here. So we got to compress this one real quick. There we go. Now where's that little clip? There you go. Okay. Okay. Take that piece out. And then let's let it back up. So, like I said right here, you have the ramp assembly, and then you have a little clutch in the middle, and then what we're replacing under this little spring washer right here, see this assembly goes right here, is the factory shim. So right here, you can tell that they're different thickness. So we're going to reuse this one, but we have to go down with it. And then we have the second clip right there. So yeah, so we're gonna get this little piece right here, and then we're gonna, actually, you know what? Let me get that socket I was using. Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Let me grab one more socket. Okay, so I'm gonna make this a little bit easier for myself. Let me line this up. I'm gonna put this right here. This is the factory shim, remember, not the one that I include in the kit. So we're gonna push down on that, and then it's gonna hold it for us. Then I have to take off this other clip right here that holds this whole clutch assembly in here. Give me a second, let me weasel this thing out. There we go. Okay. Then, since I already did this shim here, it's going to go under the clip to take the free space. And then, you just put this bad boy back in. Remember, there's 2 slots for 2 different pins, or clips, I mean, sorry. There you go. And then that's in there. And there's still a little bit of play because, I don't know, that's just how it's designed. Now we take the thicker shim and it goes on top of that C-clip. Then you put the conical washer and then the ramp assembly retainer, whatever you want to call it. Okay, now something important, make sure that you line up these little tabs with those circles. Otherwise, the ramp assembly is not going to fit back in. So, we're going to go right here, put my little setup back in. Press it down. And that's it. There you go. All the clips are in, upgraded. Let's put it back together. Okay, so now it's time to put everything back together. Pretty straightforward. I just put these ball bearings right here. I'm gonna put them back so they stay, so I'm not like fighting it, having them fall down when I put this all together. Because like I said, we have to make sure that these match up with the little tabs so that, oop, see, that's what I didn't want to happen. So yeah, you just have to be careful. It's very slippery. It's covered in this dual pump fluid. So, and then you just have to take this piece. There you go, and it fits all the way down. Make sure that this little needle bearing is in there. And this piece goes in. Remember we were talking about that little pump piece? It fits right here. Just hold this. And then I'm gonna use a screwdriver because my fingers are too fat. There we go. And it's on. So now let's take this. Oh, don't forget there's a little shim that goes on the front right here. Don't forget that. It fell down when I put this all together. So we're gonna clean this bad boy up a little bit. Get rid of all the schmutz. Man, I used too many rags on this. Okay. Okay, now, let me clean up this one too. Okay. Careful so it doesn't slide off. There's not really anything holding it on there. If you're careful, you can actually do this install inside the car and not even take the diff out. So just use a little bit of gray silicone. That's how it came from the factory. Honda Bond, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. I don't really like using the Honda Bond, it's a little too hard. So I just use the Ultra Gray. I just get it from the auto parts store. So it seems to work fine for me. You know, I don't really have any leaks, so just lather this thing up. So I don't got any leaks. And then this diff is actually for a customer car that I'm working on. I'm doing a EP3 all-wheel drive. Maybe film some of that stuff if I got some time. YouTube doesn't pay my bills, so I gotta work on customer cars. Okay, good enough. Go. Get one more and then I'll set it down. Okay, now gonna have to put the flange in. Gonna have to give it a few taps. Okay, now remember, this little O-ring is kind of difficult. Can you see that right there? This O-ring is kind of difficult. You're gonna have to get in that slot. I mean, you might want to consider going to the dealership and getting a new one. They do sell them. Don't want this thing leaking. That'll be good enough. There you go. Put the retainer, put the clip, the washer. There you go. That is it. Ready to install and enjoy. I'd also like to answer a few questions about the all-wheel drive setups. You know, there's a few misconceptions on the internet. A lot of people like to express their opinions on what setup they need to run, but then people assume that their opinion is fact. It just is not. So the older Hondas, like I was saying before, run a viscous coupler, and then in, I don't know, in the Americas, right here in '97 or whatever, the CRV came out and ran the dual pump setup for fuel economy. Okay. Some people think that the only way to make your Honda all-wheel drive doing a conversion is to run a viscous coupler. That is just simply not true. These diffs work just fine. This style, this year, is what I prefer, and this is what I've tested. So, unmodified, I was seeing about 125 horsepower to the rear wheels, and 125 horsepower is not nothing. Modified, I was seeing 150 and quicker engagement. So 150 horsepower going to the rear, let's say you have a 300 horsepower car, and then you have a 450 horsepower car. Which one's going to be faster? Because you still can't hook up over 300 horsepower to the front, even with great tires on the street. So having this in the rear is going to give you power. Sure, the viscous couplers, they grip a lot better. I'm currently running a Gear X viscous coupler in my Civic, but I did have a lot of fun with a modified CRV Rear. So you can run this setup and then you can modify it later. So for people who are budget minded, they want to run the stock CRV setup or a modified CRV setup, run it. And then later on, if you want more power going to the rear, run a viscous coupler. There's nothing wrong with that. The nice thing about the Gear X viscous coupler, it goes inside the rear, replacing this whole assembly that I modified. So it's essentially bolt-in if you already have this setup. So it's great for people looking for something to upgrade. You know what, that may be my opinion, but you know what, I do work on cars for a living. So that's what I think. And that's just my 2 cents. So you can message me on Instagram, Gravy Built, just like my YouTube channel, and I can sell you one of these kits if you like. You know, it's up to you guys. So let me know what you think about the video, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.